Welcome to the Huff-N-Stuff podcast, where we discuss board games, card games, and entertainment for the casual gamer. Brought to you by the Southwest Valley Gaming Group. We invite you to visit our podcast at huffnstuffpodcast.webs.com. We are so glad you joined us. Now here are your Huff-N-Stuff hosts for today's episode.
Well, look who showed up. Well, this is episode 9 of the Huff-N-Stuff podcast. Are you ready?
Heute ist Durchspielen.
And welcome to our 9th episode of the Huff-N-Stuff podcast. Well, guys, I'm so glad you joined us. This episode, we are going to be sitting down talking with my friend Chad regarding German games, how they affected the hobby, and where are they going in the future. That sort of stuff. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode.
Hey guys, now it's time to talk about what we've been playing recently.
I'll just jump in here and I'll say that I played 3 games recently that are kind of new to me. I had a bunch of friends come over. We played Twilight Imperium. I'm not saying I didn't like the game. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It's kind of hard to explain, to be quite honest with you. This game had a couple things going on that I think are flaws. Now, people are going to be all pissed that I'm even talking this way because Twilight Imperium is supposed to be the daddy of all Ameritrash games. I shouldn't say that, but they're super popular. Anyways. One of the problems I believe with the game is that you only get 10 points. Once you get 10 victory points, you win the game. Each point is damn near impossible to get. I had a hell of a time just getting 4 points. Part of the problem is there's too much randomness in it. So when they had the deck of objective cards, I had something that was like take over 2 home planets of 2 different players. And that's damn near impossible. So that was like worth a lot of points. And then all the other ones seemed like they were hard. And not only that, but when they shuffled up, they pulled out a certain number out of like 40, 50 cards or whatever out of the objective deck. And they pulled them out. And then those certain amount was every round they'd pull out a new objective, a minor objective, I guess. You would pull out a minor one. Well, usually there's a mix. There's some technology bonuses you can get or points, and then there was some where it didn't have technology, where it was like attacking, aggressive parts. I just didn't like it. And see, other games that I've played, Euro games, Ameritrash, you get points for a lot of little things. Like you get it over here, you may get it over here. There's lots of different ways of winning. Unless you're pulling punches in the middle of that universe map, probably not going to win the game. If you're turtling, if you're sitting back and trying to build your technology tree, whatever, you're just not going to win. And so that kind of forces you to attack, and it's a little too aggressive for my taste. Now, there's nothing wrong with being aggressive, because I know there's plenty of people out there who like games like, Spartacus. And they just love that kind of stuff. But there's just some flaws with the game. And if you're having a bad time with TI3, you're there for 8 to 10 hours. And if you're having a bad time with it and you're getting screwed, or you're with some really aggressive people, you're screwed and you're stuck for 8 to 10 hours. And that's the nice thing about, these other games. Well, people love filler games because they're in it for a half hour or so, 15 minutes, whatever. Game's done. If you got screwed, you got a bad hand or whatever, it'll be over soon. You haven't sacrificed a lot. You haven't given a whole lot. What have you played recently, Chad?
One of the games I've been playing recently is the Speicherstadt.
Oh, yeah, that game we played the other day.
Yeah, we played it the other day. I've played that a couple other times. It's Steffenfeld, kind of a quicker game of his where I guess the mechanism is there's bidding on different cards that come out in the game, and it's kind of a cool bidding mechanism where everyone puts down a meeple. Everybody gets 3 per round, and when you put your meeple on a card, that kind of dictates the price. So if I put 1 down, it's worth 1. I have to pay 1 for it. But if Rob comes behind me and puts down 1, then that would make it cost 2. And if another puts down 1, make it cost 3. So you can kind of mess around with other people by making them pay more if they really want that card. And you get some cards are ship cards and they have goods on them.
Right.
Then you have contracts you have to fulfill, and there's a fire mechanism where you can buy a fireman card, and every time that there's set rounds each game. It's not set; it's kind of mixed into 4 different stacks of the cards.
And what is the name of that again?
The Speicherstadt. It's
okay. I cannot pronounce that. You're very good at it.
It's going to fit in with the German board games, I guess. I think it's a warehouse district in.
Sure.
I think it's Hamburg. I'm not 100% sure of the exact city where that is. But
I had brought this up, that game, in the previous episode.
Oh, okay.
Because that was we recorded the last episode the day after you and I had played that game at the game store, and I said it was good. It just, I think it doesn't scale well. I know we played with you and me. If you had like 4 people, really be good in that game. If we had any less than 4, 3 would be okay, but 2 kind of lacks because we were just kind of like, I'd block you, you'd block me. It didn't seem like it need, you know what I'm saying?
I think 2 could work if you'd played it a couple different times. You had no idea what cards were coming up. It was only like my second or third time to play it, but even having just played it a couple times, I think it gave me advantage over you because I knew that like in the last round there weren't going to be any more contract cards come out and things like that. I think that just kind of helped a little bit. Even though I tried to, I always try to make sure I explain all the rules as you go. You kind of forget some of the nuances.
I think that was fine. Yeah. I mean, all of that whole part where I didn't really know, I think you taught it fine. It was just, like I said, I think that there were some things that, obviously any game is going to take 2 or 3 plays to really know if you're going to like it. It's hard to judge. Just like I played Twilight Imperium for the first time. It's really hard for me to judge. I think if I played it a couple more times, I'd probably find I either liked it or hated it.
Yeah.
Plus, if I kind of know, because my head was swimming. It's a really intense game.
Yeah, I bet.
So, anyways, but yeah, that I can see, and all the artwork on your game, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it, that your game, the artwork was beautiful. I liked the components. They had really nice metal pieces. What were those things?
They were metal coins, but they were actually made out of cardboard, and there was one metal coin that was for the first.
Right.
The first player has a coin that's actually a coin.
Right. They were like chrome looking or something.
Yeah, they were a little bit thicker than your normal cardboard shit.
Yeah. And I think all of the, like I said, the artwork and everything was really beautiful. It was a nicely produced game, actually.
Yeah, and it's a small game. It can go pretty quick once you get into it. It's probably 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah, once I knew it, I'd probably have a better assumption.
It definitely was a better. We played it right after you and I played the 2-player game. We played it with 4.
Oh, did you?
And I thought it was a lot bigger challenge because it's it's a little bit harder to figure out what's going to be available whenever you're just playing with 2 people. You've got a pretty good shot at kind of dictating some of what happens, especially if you're the first player.
Right. So. Last night, my wife and I sat down, and I always love Saturday nights because that's my wife and I's time. We can sit down. It's kind of like a date night, but she'll break out some drinks and we'll play some games, and I just love it. Playing games, just her and I. What was it? Last holiday period, we had bought some games from Fantasy Flight. They had that sale. I think I told you about it before. And we had finally got around to playing one of the games we bought called Olympus, and it is a ancient Greek styled game. The artwork on this is off the charts good. It's beautiful, and I really like this game. And in many ways, it felt a bit like Agricola, but it was a little quicker. It was a bit simplified. It was basically, in my opinion, it was a simplified version of it. And of course, I love the theme of ancient Greeks. In fact, that's one of my favorite times in history. I have a real love for the ancient Greeks. I don't know why. I find it fascinating how they came up with democracy and all this. I mean, I'm not sure they actually came up with it, but they were the ones that everyone thinks of as coming up with it.
Right.
In any case, I really enjoyed that game. Enjoyed the heck out of it. Now, my wife won. That's fine. I don't mind her winning because she's my wife. It's cool. Plus, if she wins most of the time, then she'll be more apt to play. She gets a little competitive.
That's the secret.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the other game I played recently. What else have you played, Chad?
I played Alhambra for the first time.
Okay.
That's
right. When we played
same night we played the Spicer Stout. We played Alhambra, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, looking at the game, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot to it.
Right.
It seems like you're just kind of drawing tiles and bidding on them. And if you have the kind of a little bit of luck of the draw with the money cards that you have to get them, but actually playing it, and we played it with 6, which I think might be a person or two too many because there's a little bit of downtime.
Yeah, it's too much.
But even then, it was kind of fun. Hoping that a certain a certain tile came back to you, and you got to build your own little town, and then the scoring mechanism was cool. Although it did take a little bit, I thought it was kind of a little time consuming to kind of go around the table with 6 people and try to figure out who had the most tiles of each color. But that said, I thought the game was pretty exciting and kind of fun, and kind of everyone was in it. It seemed like, except for maybe
the guy
one player,
John.
Yeah.
He was out of it. Yeah.
He was kind of out of it from the beginning, but everybody else was kind of in it till the end, and it made it kind of fun that it was kind of a 5-way fight for the lead there, and I thought it was good. I thought everyone was into it. and I think everybody there had a pretty good time with it for a game that's a little bit older.
Yeah, the girl who won, I should say girl, the woman who won is not a gamer at all.
Right,
In
Tammy,
fact,
I think her name
yeah,
was.
Tammy. And she didn't seem like she is very into games. I mean, she enjoys them, like everybody else, like my wife. It would be like my wife winning. I'm not saying that because I'm a chauvinist here, but it's because sometimes I get the impression women just want to go and enjoy themselves and play a game. They're not overly competitive and all
Right.
that. But she really did it. She did a great job on that game. She really kicked butt.
Yeah, you can maybe she's one of those that's kind of like a snake in the grass. You kind of
Yeah.
you kind of sit there the whole time and you're concentrating on other people, trying to work your way ahead of them, and then just the whole time I think she played her game and I think she won by quite a bit in the end.
Yeah.
But it was. The way that scoring mechanism is, you can kind of look around and have an idea what's coming, but if there's one tile can make a big difference because it can get you from a tie to the lead, or get you that third round. There's points for first, second, and third. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting, and I'm glad we got to play it.
Yeah, it was solid game.
Yeah,
solid game. Now there was another one I played Thursday. Ken had brought a game and he had been wanting to play it. It was called City of Remnants. It's by Plaid Hat Games. Every time he came just a little later than because I got there really early. So I started a game right away, and then he gets on some other group because they're starting their group over there, so he'll get over there. So he never quite gets it to the table. So I said last Tuesday or Wednesday, I said, okay, Ken, I'll reserve myself. I won't play anything else until I play your game. So he came and we got it open, and we were playing with this other married couple, Tim and Julie. It was a pretty good game. I'm not sure I completely like it. I shouldn't say I don't like it, but I wouldn't own it, I guess I should say. It's a solid game. The artwork was very interesting. It was a little fiddly. There was a lot of little pieces all over the board. It was everywhere. There's all these little pieces, and every time you had to go do something, you had to do this, or you had to do that. With that said, all the mechanics seemed to fit. It was very thematic. Really interesting game, really. I ended up winning. I think I was just some luck there, and some things fell into place. It wasn't planned by any means. It was good. We enjoyed it. We had good people that were playing, so it was fun. Is there anything else you played recently?
One other thing I've played is...
Anything at home?
I play at home. I got my wife to play Burger Joint.
Okay.
It's a little 2-player game by Rio Grande Games.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of seems like it's a Cosmos 2-player game, but it's not. Same size box. And it was pretty good. It wasn't great. But 2-player games, as long as they kind of engage you for 20, 30 minutes, sometimes it seems like it's worth it. Mm-hmm. And that's what. And it was good. It was kind of back and forth. You're building... there's really the theme's kind of pasted on for sure.
Yeah.
Because you're just kind of drawing these cubes, and they could maybe make them into lettuce and tomato and whatever. But you're also the game is one person's a burger joint, one person's a pizza parlor, and you're building these restaurants. But so the theme doesn't really make sense. But that said, it's an interesting game, and I only played it once, and it was. I think I won at the last second, but my wife liked it enough where she said she'd play, and
that's cool.
She doesn't play many games. She's she'll play a lot of the games whenever we play with the kids. Most of the games we play are, 4-player games when the kids get in and play. But every once in a while, I'll get an adult game in. Although Burger Joint wasn't that hard, I think kids could play it.
Sure, it seems like it would be that way.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a little
tailored for families.
Yeah, and the rules were a little bit hard to kind of figure out. But once you start playing it, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Cool.
There's definitely different avenues to win.
And now, it's time for Word of the Day.
Thank you, Elise. That's right, we're on to Word of the Day. And this time we're going to be talking about Kingmaker is the word of the day. A player himself in a losing position that has the power to decide who will win a given game, generally in negotiation games. Settlers of Catan, Nothing Personal, Junta, and Dune are all examples of a Kingmaker. And in games where you have a lot of negotiation, this Kingmaker is a factor in those games where you're kind of out of it. You don't have any powers to necessarily win. You can see the forest for the trees, so to speak, and then you just jump in there and help someone win, basically. I think you could say the Kingmaker is one of these types of abilities where you can help someone win. Have you had any opportunity to see this in a game there, Chad?
Definitely. It seems like whenever you have these Kingmaker games, you're always, you kind of it kind of comes to light whenever you're the guy that's winning, mm-hmm. and sometimes people pick on you a little bit.
Right.
That's kind of that catch-up mechanism.
Sure.
But it's frustrating whenever it's you. It's always fun whenever it's someone choosing you to put you up ahead of the guy that's in the lead. So sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be bad. I guess it depends on which position you're in. It's being in the position that's safe, you're out of it. Sometimes it's kind of hard to decide because you do have an opportunity that if I play this way, this guy's going to win. If I play the other way, this guy's going to win. And sometimes, those negotiation games, it comes down to, who has wronged you the most. And that's kind of how the game's designed. So sometimes you have to kind of win with honor. Right. Otherwise, someone's going to have the opportunity to come back and kind of stick it to you. And that's kind of how, that's in the design of the game in a lot of those negotiation games. So
I noticed there was a little bit of that going on with Twilight Imperium.
Okay.
Like I was able to help someone else boost their thing, and I was like, "Hey, I'm okay with losing, just so that guy doesn't win."
Right.
And there's a little bit of, I think, with this kingmaker sort of term or this sort of phenomena that people they'll get frustrated, and so in order to get some players back, they'll help someone else so they can get that player back. So I think there's a little bit of that going on with this whole kingmaker too.
You've been listening to the Huff-N-Stuff podcast, where train games and chibi games are not allowed.
And now it's time for our main topic.
That's right, Elise. We are on to our main topic. Okay, so before we go on, I found a quote that I thought was really interesting. Good old Reiner Knizia here said once, when playing a game, the goal is to win. But it is the goal that is important, but not the winning. Now, you can analyze that all you want. I'm not going to even touch it. But anyways, getting on to our main topic here, I thought, since my friend Chad here really enjoys Euro games and worker placement type games and that sort of thing, plus he's married to a person that was from Germany.
Right.
What's her name again?
Her name's Simone.
Simone. Okay, I can never remember her name.
She was
I
born
apologize.
and raised in Berlin. And,
Berlin. Okay.
Right. I studied a year at the Technical University of Berlin.
Okay. Did you actually meet her there?
Actually, she was from my high school. She was an exchange student. I was that guy. She was an exchange student at my high school, and she went back to Germany, and we kind of stayed in touch, and one thing led to another.
Nice. As we're talking about German games or Euro games, because let's face it, the German games were kind of the leader of the Euros, and they are the ones that kind of, I think, sort of started the revolution. You could really make the argument that they're the ones who started the hobby board gaming.
Right.
And when I say hobby board game, I don't mean Monopoly. Monopoly is a family game that most people have come in contact with and had a great time with, but it's geared towards families, and that's great. But I'm talking real hobby-ish designer board games, and I think that the Germans were really at the forefront of this.
Yeah, no doubt. They kind of started, making the games. They one of the deals I think that they kind of focused on was kind of cutting down the length of the games.
Yeah.
It seems like, Monopoly, if you get into it, it can take you 4 or 5 hours.
Sure.
And a lot of the German-style games, it's kind of a stated, game will last an hour. And instead of kind of having like an endpoint Monopoly where you have to kind of eliminate everybody, it kind of has like a victory point mechanism, which was kind of new at the time. And I think it's kind of neater because that kind of keeps everybody involved until the very end of the game. And I think that's one of the things I like about the Euro style games.
Before we move on in this topic, let's highlight some important things that sort of hit the gaming world. In the 1960s, the game Acquire came out. Now, I don't have the exact date on that, but that was one of the games that came out to sort of turn some heads. And some people would even say that Acquire was one of those games that kind of started the gaming hobby in Germany. And some people would say that. Now, I'm not sure if that's true or not. Upon my research, that was one of the things that jumped off the page, that Acquire was the one that everyone really was like, wow. The second one, in the late 70s and early 80s, concentrated effort in Germany to start producing board games that we consider designer board game. And I've said that before, but this is really, really, really important because by the time that the 90s came around, this is when Settlers of Catan kind of hit the scene in America. True, that wasn't the only German designer board game that came over, but it was the one I think that had the most impact. And I think that Americans really was like, wow, what is this? I mean, it's definitely not Monopoly. And one of the other things that I'd like to point out is that Germany produces more board games per capita than any other country in the world. That's crazy. Because the size of America, I mean, we are way larger than Germany, yet they're producing more. So that means more people are buying or playing board games than in America.
Right. The only, I've never really, the year I was there, I didn't play a lot of games.
Really?
But if you went to a shopping center or whatever, or like a Toys R Us, or even like a Sears or whatever, the game sections were, 5 or 6 times the size of what we would have here. So it was, it was definitely more prevalent, in Germany. Although I didn't have a chance to play back then, I wasn't into the hobby. And that was 96, 97, is the year that I lived in Germany, and I was a 21-year-old kid, going to school, and then I never really got into it. Although, it was there at the time, because I remember, walking by and he's going, man, look at all these games. That was kind of it for me. And thinking back, I think, man, I wish I had bought a card game, or Settlers of Catan was out by then, and I wouldn't have had to wait 10 years to kind of discover it.
With your connections, with your in-laws and all that, I would want to go and see Essen.
Right.
That's what I would do. Yeah. I mean, if I was your family, I'd say, hey, sweetie, let's go back in October and go to Essen.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and kids go back every summer for 6 weeks or so. And I guess the deal with Essen would always be, because I've thought about it, the issue would be they're in school.
Can I go with you?
Yeah, you take a week out. And then Berlin to Essen is not necessarily close. I'd have to get a hotel and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure at some point I'd like to get over there. I've still never gone to a convention.
Still, so. I mean, if you only really went 2 days, like let's say you got a hotel and stayed overnight, and just you flew in the morning and then you stayed overnight that one night and then flew out the next night, you're only getting one hotel room, and then flying in and out back to Berlin or whatever. I would think that would be doable.
Yeah, it could be. We've always done, whenever I've traveled or the kids travel, we've tried to make longer visits because it's so expensive to fly.
Right.
You're looking at on if you get lucky, $1,000 a person.
Wow.
Usually probably closer to $1,200 per passenger is what we've always been able to find. The travel industry is so odd that you can, certain times a year are cheaper than others. But
I would think October wouldn't be too bad, would it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Germans love to travel. They love their board games and they love to travel.
Yeah, so they love to come over here and visit national parks. They love it. Every time I'm at a national park, I hear German speaking.
Right. There's definitely they travel. Yeah, they get 6 weeks of vacation, mandated. So
lucky suckers.
I know that's nice to have. So they do travel a lot. They travel inside of Europe and outside of Europe. So I think that's from their side of things, you can get some really really inexpensive flights. But flying to Germany, we still have to kind of pay what we pay.
Right.
So that's why it's cheaper for them to fly here than it is for us to fly there.
Right. Now, getting back to games here, in 95 is when Settlers of Catan hit American stores. Some sort of correlate this with like the British invasion in the 60s to how Settlers of Catan and then the subsequent German games that came to the U.S. afterwards was like that. I can tell you that from my perspective, like we talked about in maybe episode 1 or 2 of our podcast, Settlers of Catan really has changed the world. It really has. Not only is it bringing joy to families and whatnot, but it's definitely made people sort of introduce them into the hobby and just how amazing it is. Now, one of the things that German games like to sort of emphasize, even though that this is a sort of a serious hobby for them, that they like to keep their games a social and light atmosphere that's kind of fun in that way. Because they don't like to keep, from all the games I was reading and all the research I had done, most of the industry there in Germany, they are very focused on families and children. They're very interested in that. And I think that's great. Of course, I'm a father, so obviously that's important to me. And I know it is to you too, Chad. And right. your games, you oftentimes will buy a game if you think your kids will like it.
For sure. That's they're still a little bit young, so they're 9 and 10, my two kids, and so a lot of them, they're kind of at that cusp of kind of getting into some of the games that I enjoy, to play with my buddies or whatever. But they're definitely whenever we have family vacations, that's a big gaming time for us because all my brothers kind of enjoy playing, and I'm kind of the guy that gets to show off what games I've got, I've acquired since then, and they're definitely always standing over your shoulder trying to figure out what's going on. So I don't have much of a doubt that that here pretty soon they'll be able to kind of graduate to some of the bigger box games and kind of get out of the Sleeping Queens and some of the easier games that they like to play right now, because they're paying attention.
9, 10 is about that age where you can start giving them really complex concepts. Because I remember when I was a coach for hockey, I loved that range age group because they could get complex formations when we're playing hockey. Okay, you need to be over there, you need to be over here, you need to stay in the crease. There's all these terminology that they were really starting to grasp. And any younger than that, it's hard for them to grasp certain complex things. So I think they're right on the cusp there of you playing some really complex Euro games. So that's exciting for you. One of the things about German games that are a little different is, like, for example, are not like Monopoly, where Monopoly, I think you had said it before, it takes 4 hours or more sometimes, especially depending on if there's someone with AP in the group.
Right.
So, I mean, a lot of these German games are about 2 hours, more or less. And that actually is a perfect time limit. Really, it's perfect. Anything more than like 2.5, 3, people are going to be tuning out. And I know when I was a kid, that was certainly that way. Like, whenever we'd break out a board game, I'm just like, okay, no.
I don't think I've ever finished Monopoly in one sitting. It was kind of the Thanksgiving, you'd play for a little while, stop, come back. One of your cousins kind of destroyed the board. You try to remember where everything was.
Yeah, it's true.
I've never sat down and finished some of the Monopoly or even Life. They just kind of take a while.
It's just way too long.
Right.
And that's the thing that seems such a simple thing, but making sure that time limit is shorter, it was a huge deal, really. German style games have mechanisms that keep that from those games going too long. We'll get into the mechanisms in a second here, but let me throw out a couple other things. No player elimination. Like on some of these games, like potentially in Monopoly, I know we're picking on Monopoly here, but in Monopoly you could get eliminated in essence. You could have maybe one property and just be sitting there the entire game, poor, and hoping that the game would end, in some regard. And some would argue that that's virtual player elimination. The other thing is the international audience, there's very little text on some of these games. Like if you think of Settlers of Catan, it's just numbers. And I think there's some flavors, some little bit of text on some of the cards. On some of them, the development cards, I believe it is. There's some text on that, but other than that, it's pretty much, you could just slap different rules on it with, from the rule book, different language. You're ready to go. So I think that there's some of those that came around that had that international audience, and they tailored it for everybody. The other thing is that they usually have a mix of mechanisms. Like, it's a bit pacifist. I know there's a lot of people that do not like a lot of Euros because it's like you're playing a solo game. They'll often say there's not as much interaction, there's not a lot of attacking, and they're just kind of sitting off to the side. You could kind of argue that Monopoly's a little bit that way, though. It's not a lot of player interaction. The only thing you're saying is say, okay, you just landed on my property, give me some money. I mean, you could kind of say that is, so I'm not even sure that's even true. Although these are things I got off the internet from my research. There's only a few plausible or reasonable choices in each turn. Now, I'm not even sure that's right either, because maybe on the early ones, maybe the early German games.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of, Settlers of Catan, you kind of roll, and that's kind of a little bit luck-driven, but you kind of take the luck out of it by where you place your settlements, and you can kind of tell by what number you're putting that near. You kind of have to know that 7s and 8s are going to come up more often than some of the other numbers. So there's you can kind of take a little bit of the luck out of there. So there's more strategy for sure. Than some of the roll and move, early American games. There's just kind of a greater depth of strategy for sure.
Yeah, there seemed to be not a lot of downtime in some of the German games. There's fewer pieces. I mean, if you open a box of Monopoly, there's a ton of pieces in there for an older game. I mean, I know it's not a card game necessarily, but we're talking a board game. And you could say that Life doesn't have a whole lot of pieces in it, and Sorry, there's not a whole lot of pieces either. So I'm not even sure that's true either. Because Ameritrash games, or American-style games, I've seen some that have hardly any pieces. So I'm not even sure that's actual true statement there. Now, this part is true, that there's a lot of people in our industry that complain that Euro games or German games don't have any theme. Like, it's completely pasted on. I think that they're getting better, some of the Euro games. I know that the earlier ones, it's true that there is a bit of pasted theme on there. However, I would argue that Settlers of Catan, what's the tile laying game I'm trying to say? Carcassonne?
Yeah.
What's some of the other ones? Alhambra? I think they're perfectly themed fine. I don't know what they're talking about.
I guess the deal is on some of those you could paste on another theme. But
yeah, but you can say it about a lot of games.
Yeah, I think you could.
I'm not sure that's... I'm not sure these...
It seems to me like with a lot of the Ameritrash games, the only thing they paste on to me is just, it's either fiction or science fiction or fantasy. Which to me, I kind of, not being a big Ameritrash gamer, just kind of, they're all the same to me. Okay, you're in outer space, and that's kind of where it loses it for me. But with the Euro games, I guess they kind of get stuck with, a lot of, ships in the Mediterranean, sailing around, trying to take one good from here to there. There's probably too many games like that. And so
shipping games.
Yeah, shipping games, and then the train games are really popular, and the train games are always kind of lumped into one, big family of games, the 18XX games.
Right, that style.
Right. And it's kind of the same game with a little bit different, mechanisms or, a slight twist here or there to make it different. And obviously with train games, you can always just have a new map, which, can change the game. I mean, Ticket to Ride's got, however many different maps now. I'm sure it's 10 or 15 different maps.
Yeah, they got a lot.
And they kind of add, the Ticket to Ride, Maryland edition, they've got where you have benefits to be the first one to complete a route, because then the people have to pay you once they do that route. They have to pay the toll, and things like that. So it's just a little twists, little new things they can add to an old game to kind of spruce it up and make it just a little bit different, which is I always think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's not quite an expansion, or in some cases it is an expansion. That's something else I like is whenever you buy a game and you kind of play it 10, 15, 20 times, it can kind of start to get stale.
Sure.
And it seems like with the Euro games, I don't know if there were expansions before that, but I can't think of any. There's no Monopoly 2 or Sorry Again or anything like that. So it seems like a lot of the Euro games kind of started the expansions to the game, and I think that's kind of a neat aspect of them.
Sure. Now, personally, I don't. Some of the other episodes, if you've listened to them, I just don't like train games. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get why they're so popular.
I like Ticket to Ride, I guess. There's some of the crayon train games and some of the harder games. I've never played Steam or some of the harder ones, and I would like to sit down with someone that's really into them maybe and play it one time.
Sure.
And see if I like it. But Ticket to Ride's fun, I think. It's a good family game. It's nothing too crazy. I can see where someone might not like it for sure, but I think it's a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, I downloaded for my Xbox. They've got a version. And I tried that because I was like, I'm not going to buy this. I want to try it before I buy it because I'm not even sure that I just like this kind of stuff. And we were playing it, and I was like, this is it? This is what everyone's getting excited about? It's a set collection game on a map that has these routes, like a train route thing, and you just put the little squares or whatever they are on the different... It's just, I don't know, man. I just didn't get it. Anyways, before this becomes a train episode, let's definitely move on here. Now, I'm assuming that some of this research that I did, and I've been naming off some of these mechanisms or these things that sort of people sort of think of when they think of these games. And let me just tell you right now, these aren't necessarily my or even Chad's definition of a German game or a Euro game. These are just what I've done research on, and we're talking about it here. Now, one of the things that I've noticed, and this is true of a lot of these games, they have very little dice. Like Agricola has no dice.
Puerto Rico
has no dice.
Right.
So you could argue that is definitely right on, because I believe the Settlers of Catan, out of all these games we've talked about so far, is the only one that has dice. Mm-hmm. Like Ticket to Ride has no dice.
Carcassonne has
no dice. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that one I would say is right on the money. Also, positive scoring mechanisms. I'm not even sure what that means. Why don't you jump in on that, Chad, and tell me what you think that means?
I think positive scoring mechinisms, I guess, just the fact that maybe multiple scoring mechanisms.
Maybe it means that you're not attacking someone to get your points.
I guess that could be it. It's kind of worded weirdly enough that it could mean a couple different things. So
right.
Maybe it's meant to be ambiguous, but I think it's cool. On it seems like some of the current games, Stefan Feld kind of has a reputation for the point salad type games where every time you do something, you score. There's 25 different ways to score in a game, and some people like that, some people don't. I personally do like it.
I love it.
I think it's fun to have play a game and you can play it 25 times, 25 different ways, and win or lose, based on what you do, and I think that's kind of neat.
I think that's a good thing, and let me jump in here real quick. And why I think that's a good thing to have. You called it what you called the salad points?
Point salad.
And I think the point salad one is. We should put that on another episode of Word of the Day to give a little more detail to that. But I think that's a good thing, and this is why I think it's a good thing to have a point salad, is because just like I was talking about earlier when I played Twilight Imperium. I wasn't getting any points, and so it was a little frustrating and a little demoralizing, to be honest with you. When you're getting something for working on something, like you're working on something, and in a way, it's a fun work. Board games are fun in that way, but you're getting something. You can see some progress for what you're doing, and that's where I think the point salad is popular.
Right.
So getting something for doing these actions is an encouragement in a way. It's encouraging you to continue and to triumph and get to that final thing, right? So in many ways, I think more games need to do this. In my opinion, that if you don't get, like, there are some games you couldn't do that in, like Robinson Crusoe that I brought up before. You're just trying to survive. So if you survive, you win. I mean, that's fine. But in most games where they have victory points and stuff, I think they need to do that. Or if you're going to have victory by the more coins you get or whatever, or money, then they need to have other ways of making money. I know Le Havre, I think, has that, where your victory points are the money you make, right? Isn't that how it is?
I've only played Le Havre one time.
Don't you have it?
I have it. I only have it on iOS.
Oh.
So, and I've played it.
You had the board game.
I do not.
Huh.
No.
I thought you had. You sure you had that one?
And I do not have that.
Wow. Well, that's one
it's
you
on
don't
my
have.
list. It's on my list.
But anyway, so yeah, I think that is a good thing, and I think that's one thing that I think it's influenced a lot of the American games too. That positive scoring mechanism. I think that's a big one in my opinion. Now, the other thing I'd kind of like to do, I found a website that had something that was really interesting. It had a Eurogame versus American games. And I'm tired of saying Ameritrash because it's in my mind, it's such a negative term. It's a derogatory one, and it's just. I'm sorry, but it's a horrible word. I think American games is probably more of a proper thing to say. So this one website, it was a blog, and they were asking questions about, because it was some new people into the industry, and they were asking, what's this? What's a Euro type game and all this? And the gentleman who was hosting the web page had a really great aspect of it. He came up with a compare and contrast part of his blog. And so I'm just going to throw these out to you, and hopefully, Chad, you and I can discuss about some of these. But the bits. On a Euro game, they're very into wooden or generic bits, like the famous wooden cube. Yeah. It's on almost every game these days.
Or a meeple.
Right. And I think meeples are less of a bit than the actual little cube. I think the cube's on every game I've ever seen. I'm exaggerating, obviously.
They're definitely in a lot of games, that's for sure.
And at first I was thinking, well, why don't they have like those round hockey pucks or something, like as in Agricola? They got the round hockey pucks. But if they get up on their edge, they'll roll right off the table. So that can be a bad thing. So I can see where the cubes kind of stay put. And so in some ways, that's a good thing.
Yeah, the cubes a lot of times are goods. They're kind of working.
Yeah,
they represent
goods.
A good there.
Yeah, and I know that there are like some game manufacturers, like Days of Wonder, where they'll have like little chests or something, or they'll have really nice little components to their game boards. Their games. And I'm like, why couldn't they do that? Why couldn't they do, instead of having a little cube, have a little cardboard box looking thing? But cost.
I'm sure it's got to be cost.
It's all cost, really. And in many ways, the cubes do just fine. Just like this game I just played the other day, it was Olympus. And there was goods where it was fishing, wheat, and meat. Well, how are you going to put meat? Yeah, I guess you could put a little steak in the thing, but how many little steaks can you go buy? Where would you even find that? So I can understand, and the cubes work just fine. So now on the American style games, they are very into plastic miniatures, dice, and that's visually just fun. Mm-hmm. It's visually fun. It's like being a kid again. It's like you and I played the other day, that Days of Wonder Memoir 44.
Right. And
it had minis galore. And that was fun. I felt like a kid again with the green plastic miniatures.
Right.
It was fun.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Yeah, it was a fun game, and it did kind of seem like you're in your sandbox with your little green plastic soldiers.
Exactly. And that's where I think that the American games are great, in that the components help draw you in. They help carry the theme, and I think that's kind of important. So one up for the American side, right? No, just kidding. Now the other thing is theme, and we had talked about this a little bit before, where the Euro games have real trouble linking up some of their games and their themes. Now, I don't know if that's true necessarily, because, like I said before, I think that Settlers of Catan is fine. In fact, if you buy any of their expansions to the game, like you had found one...
Seafarers,
thank you. I bought the Seafarers off you. You found it at a Goodwill store, and in shrink wrap, I should say, as amazing find. That helps bring a little bit more of the theme out a little bit more. You got ports, and it makes the whole, there's a bunch of islands, and it really not only brings depth to the game, but that theme really sort of comes out a little bit more. I think theme is fine in Euro games.
Yeah, just there's definitely some abstract Euro games, and I guess there's a desire for either the designers or from the people playing them to have some sort of theme. I'm fine with playing just an abstract in and of itself. I love the game Quarto. I think it's fun. There's no reason for it to be anything other than just some basically like chess pieces moving around. I'm kind of fine with that. I think it's a cool game in and of itself.
I mean, you could argue that chess is really abstract, just like Chinese checkers. They are pure mechanical games,
right?
So, and they work just fine, and people have a blast with these games.
Mm-hmm. They definitely withstood the test of time,
right? So. And I think that part of this issue is American games of recent, I think ever since really Arkham Horror came out in I think it was the early 2000s.
Yeah.
When those came out, I think that's when people started saying, well, why don't these Euro games have it? Mm-hmm. So I think that the German games, the Euro games, had to kind of go back and say, well, gee, that wouldn't be a big deal to put some more theme into it. And like really really try to build it into it. And I think some of the games recently that have come out are quite like Bruges.
Yeah,
you got Bruges, and that was a very thematic game. You had the canals around the outside of the city that you had to build, and that's all really thematic. I just think that's a bit of a generalization. But again, all these are really generalizations. American games, I think that they've always had a fairly strong theme to them. In fact, sometimes they have too much. Like, there are some games out there that Americans really grasped onto RPGs. Mm-hmm. And I think Americans were kind of the leaders or kind of in the forefront of that whole industry. I mean, TSR came right out of the U.S. of guys who had been playing war games. And so they started doing that. And that is nothing but theme. I mean, you could argue, you're building your character and you have so many hit points and all, but it really is just, it's pure imagination, it's pure theme. There's not a lot of mechanics to it. So you could argue that too. So I think Americans always, and I think part of that you could say is people work hard in the U.S. And I think people need an escape. I think that's why movies are so popular, have always been popular in the U.S. It's just people want an escape, and I think theme helps that. Now rules. What's your? I'm gonna throw this back in your court. You're really like the rules master. Anytime we get a new game, not only do you read it and almost understand it instantly, when we're learning a game and you break a new one out, like I think you just brought one today. You just brought a new one, and it's like you have this amazing knack for just being able to read a rule book and just kind of knowing it right off the bat.
I've never really thought of it that way, but
you are. You're awesome as far as anyone I've known.
Yeah, whenever I introduce a game, I like to make sure I know it a little bit. And there's, Board Game Geek's, kind of my go-to. There's so many videos and reviews and rules explanations. Just to go into the forums and kind of people ask the questions that before I do. That way you can kind of come in with a plan. I don't, there's definitely been times where I've brought a game and I had no idea.
Yeah.
It just seems to kind of, to hurt the game, and everyone's kind of left grasping for straws. So I definitely try to come in, if possible, crack it open and play it one time, by myself. Or maybe a round or two, just so I have an idea of how it's supposed to work.
And what do you think about the rules in comparison, like Euro type games and the U.S. ones?
It seems like the Euro type games, there's usually fewer rules. There's definitely a push to have a 1, a 2, or 3 page rule book. I mean, some of the big Euros have quite a bit more. But a lot of those are examples. They do a lot of examples in the rule books, and
examples are I think paramount.
Yeah, I think so. And the pictures that they have of with explanations of individual rules, and there's definitely some good examples out there of great rule books, and there's probably even more of bad rule books. That can be really frustrating when you're playing a game and you kind of get stuck, or someone finds a loophole that's probably explained somewhere else further in the rules, and then kind of exploit that misunderstanding of the rule to their advantage.
Right. One thing I've noticed about American style games is there could be 1 or 2 whole pages of just backstory of this game.
Right.
Where it's like you open up a Queen game. Queen game is from Germany, as you know, and Queen's game, the old German company, you open it up, bam, there's the rules right there. There's no playing around.
And there's usually six rule books there, one for each language in the box.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what the majority of the rule book is, or other languages.
Right.
It's like maybe 2 to 4 pages max.
Mm-hmm. They kind of get right down to it.
Right. I just bought Fresco, or I shouldn't say bought. I got for Christmas Fresco, and so we played it, and I learned it, and it was really easy. It was really easy to learn those rules. Queen's Game does a really great job with their rules too, so that's no, it doesn't hurt anything. Now, one of the things are luck versus strategy. I know we had this episode a while back, but let's kind of go over this really quick. I know in a lot of Euro games, there's not a lot of luck there, and on American games, there's tons of luck. Sometimes too much. Sometimes I like to have a blend. I like to have a little bit of luck there. And one of the things that I know we had talked about in that first, or what was it, second? I can't remember what episode it was, but one of the episodes we had on luck versus strategy, you need a little bit of luck so that it makes not only things be interesting, okay, but to help those beginner players. Because if you're an advanced player and there's no luck there, not only does it not give you a challenge, you kind of can figure it out after a few plays, but it helps give things a little more interesting. It gives the beginners a little bit of luck, because let's say they get a special card that came out and it gives them a boost. That's kind of good. Like if you think about, a great example is Settlers of Catan. Some of that luck is in the dice, some of it's in the development cards, because when you pull out, get extra 2 pieces of road. Right? You build 2 road pieces. Good games need a little bit of luck. Not massive amounts, but a little bit helps balance things.
Yeah, I like games where you can kind of control your luck a little bit. Where if you get an extra die or something like that, those are the ones I like. But I definitely think that the luck's necessary in most games to kind of keep that randomness. Keep you on your toes a little bit. And, it's kind of fun to cheer for. The lucky dice roll.
Sure,
it's always fun.
I'm going to throw out examples before fun. Some examples of this. We brought these up already, but let me throw them out again. Puerto Rico, Agricola, Power Grid, Carcassonne. Now, we didn't talk about Power Grid. Well, for my own taste, Power Grid is one of my favorite Euro games. I don't know why, because when you look at the map and you look at the artwork, it's like, wow, this game totally blows.
It's really dry looking.
It just looks horrible.
It plays very fun, yeah. And once you get into it, it has that ability. Everyone that plays it gets into it.
Right. And I love the whole buying the power stations and how and I usually don't like bidding games. I do not like bidding and auctions, but it works really well in this game. The examples of American games are, like we said, Arkham Horror, Axis and Allies, and here I was trying to come up with Arkham Horror. It's right there on the page. I wrote it down for myself. War of the Ring, Twilight Imperium 3, like we had talked about earlier. Okay, so this begs the question: where are the German games going in the future? What do you think, Chad?
It just seems to me like they're the distinction between the two. Kind of as you hinted on with the German style games, looking at the American style games, going like, hey, why don't we try more of that? But it kind of goes vice versa.
Right.
So it seems like there's more of a kind of a blending of the two, and the distinctions are getting less and less. And I can see that's where it's going. It seems like there's also more emerging markets or countries. I know like Czechoslovakia and Poland and Italy have a lot of game developers and game designers that are coming from those countries. I think it's always kind of cool whenever you get someone that just thinks a little bit differently. It doesn't take someone that's been making. Usually, it's someone's first or second design is the one that kind of has that new mechanism that kind of hasn't been seen before, and I think that's exciting because as games get more widespread, it's just more and more people will play them, but also more and more people will design them, and I think that the more games out there, the better. It seems like, although it's just frustrating because I want all of them. So
right, that's for sure. And I've kind of topped out. I think I'm at about 50 or 60 games, and I'm kind of topped out right now. I think that I try to be careful, and I don't want to get too many games that get like burned out either. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I try to be really, really careful about what I have. I'm really kind of curious what this next. I think it's either July or August, the next time they have a board game sale. Or is it in June? I can't remember when it usually is over there at our local game store. They have a used game sale. And I love those things.
Yeah, like a little garage sale.
Right. It's like a garage sale, and I love seeing those things. And I'm going to have a table myself this time.
Oh, there you go.
But in any case, I'm really curious what other people are going to be bringing and having there. Because I love buying those used games. You and I had talked about this before we got into the podcast. And I wrote down on my sheet here, on my paper, hybrids. And I think that the hybrid genre, or that games that were considered Euros, will, I think, in time go away. Yeah, a game might be from the Czech Republic or Poland or even Germany, Netherlands, whatever. I think there'll be designations. This game comes from this country, but I think that designation of Euro games or German games are going to be going away because of that hybrid sort of feel to games. Because everyone is looking at everybody else's things. We live in such a small world. And with the internet and with all these, Essen and Gen Con, there's people coming from overseas to go to Gen Con that want to see all these Euro games, and they see these gigantic Fantasy Flight big exhibits, and they're like, oh my God, and they're just like, in a way, taken aback. And I'm sure we kind of are that way when we go to Essen. And I said not we, but our designers go there, and we see all this stuff, and there's this blending, I think, that is taking place even now. Even the last 2 or 3, even 5 years, there's been a blending. I mean, Bruges is not what it would be if it came out in the late 90s. If Bruges came out in the 90s, it would be completely different. I think it wouldn't have quite as much theme, flavor text on the cards, because if you look at those cards on Bruges, I know we're sort of delving into Bruges here, but the characters, and they got a little bit of text on them, and it helps buy into or get into that game. Having that, I think that a lot of where the future of this is going are games are becoming quicker, lighter, more themey. Like I said, ease of travel and communication is making all this sort of come together. And like I said, the huge toy fairs and all this, just like I think the Chicago toy fair is coming around too. I think they're looking at Essen and they're like, we kind of want to be like that. And I don't know if you've ever seen, if you ever get a chance to go online and go to YouTube, they've got quite a few videos on highlighting the Chicago Toy Fair. And it is really fascinating because it looks like the little sister to Essen. I mean, Chicago and its toy fair is gigantic, but it geared towards families. And if you look at Essen really is for families. I mean, that's their focus, I think. Most games in Essen, if you've ever seen the videos online, they're really geared for families and kids. Germans do a superior job with kids' games. Now, that's one thing we haven't gotten into with the German games, but I believe German games are superior when it comes to children's games. If you look at some of the stuff coming out of Germany. And it's too bad, because I think that that's an untapped market. I think parents go to the store and they go, oh, we'll get Old Maid, or we'll get Uno, or whatever.
Shoots and Ladders.
Or something. and those games are okay, they're good, but the German games are so much better.
I love the hobby games.
Oh my God, they're so good.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're probably sick of Sleeping Queens and these other games, but I don't even think those are German games, though.
They're Game Right games. I think they were designed by an American girl who's like 7 years old or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, again, and I know that there are so many good games out there, and I know there's that one game, and I should have written this down, but this was kind of off the cuff here about children's games. But I know there was a couple of German games that I had seen recently where it was a magnetized board, and the little pieces would run around the board, and they were I think it was little Red Riding Hood or something. There was a tower, and they got in, and there was one called something Forest, like Forbidden Forest, and
Enchanted Forest.
Enchanted Forest. There you go, and that's a German game too.
Yeah.
And you flip it's kind of a memory kind of game.
Pine trees.
Yeah, you flip the pine trees, and
Yeah.
that's ingenious. And the whole thing looks amazing. The box art, the components are just amazing, high quality. I'm just like, it's just a shame that American games don't have that level of quality or just amazing fact. So anyway, so that I think covers everything we kind of wanted to go over with German games. And I know you, of course, are very interested to see what holds for the future. I know that there has been a few radio, or I should say radio, but podcasts that are, so far we haven't had a big blockbuster. And there's been so many blockbusters that come out of Germany. Every, 5-10 years-ish? And we haven't had a big blockbuster in a while. I know that 2013 had a really good year. Caverna came out, and that's a definite Euro game.
Right.
And there's been some big ones, but we haven't had, like they were saying, especially Tom Vassell has been really saying this. He's like,
we're due.
Huh?
He's been saying we're due for a...
Yeah, we're due. He's been
a new game that's going to...
If you listen to Tom Vassell, and I believe that.
I hope he's right, yeah.
And I believe it'll be out of Europe. And it may not even be out of Germany necessarily. It may be out of France or Netherlands. You know, who knows? Or even the Czech Republic, because the Czech Republic has been producing that part of the world, has been producing some amazing stuff like Mage Knight. I can't remember his name now, the designer of that game.
Chivadl,
that's it. Mage Knight and Robinson Crusoe, Ignacy,
Trevicek?
Yeah, Trevicek or something. It's really tough names. I'm terrible. But these games were kind of blockbusters. They snuck up on, I think, the gaming world. But I think those, and I think that part of the world, I keep hearing that there's these great games coming out of Asia, but I don't really see it. I mean,
Love Letter, I guess. You know, it's kind of...
Love Letter, I guess, yeah. But that was kind of like, I really believe that was kind of like a comet. It was here, everyone was playing it, and it's gone. Right? I mean, don't get me wrong. It
seems like there's definitely some card games that are coming out of there. That Machi Koro sounds interesting to me.
They're very into card games there. And I think it's because it's compact. In that part of the world, everything's so small and compact. Like, I know in Japan, it's like, to get a room there is insane. You got this little tiny room. Yeah. Because I know my brother was teaching there for a while. But anyways, that's a whole nother topic. So anyways, I'm really interested to see what comes out of there in this coming year. So we'll see, won't we? That's our episode. Thank you for listening. Hope you tune in next time. See you later.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining the Huff-N-Stuff podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening and hope you can tune in next time. Huff-N-Stuff is brought to you by Southwestern Valley Gaming Group at swvalleygamingsgroup.webs.com. You can visit us on our webpage at huffnstuffpodcast.webs.com. That is HUFFNSTUFF podcast.webs.com. We love to hear from you, so leave us questions, feedback, or just say hi. As always, keep on smiling and game on.